Hello everybody, welcome to a badly shot guide video which should hopefully show you how to replace the PSU in your PC. Before we carry on, I just want to say I'm sorry for not putting up any videos lately. I should have a couple up this week, and then after that I should be back onto our usual 1-2 a week schedule. Anyway, you may have heard me mention in the past that when I first bought this PC, the graphics card tended to make a lot of coil whine, and despite recently upgrading the graphics card to a GTX 960, the coil whine has remained. So despite that card having a good reputation for having little to no coil whine, so I understand that certain combinations of PSUs and motherboards can lead to increased coil whine when in graphics cards, so I've decided to try giving the PSU swap a try. I've acquired a new Corsair CX series 600W PSU, and I've decided why not do a blog or guide of the process. So just bear in mind that I have no idea what I'm doing, so if I get through this without dying or causing a small electrical fire, then you can at least go ahead with the confidence that if I did it fine, then you'll be golden. Okay, so I've moved the PC out into a nice open workspace so we can see what we're doing. There's a few things you're going to need before you start. There isn't a great deal, but at the minimum you're going to want the computer you're trying to repair. You're also going to need a standard Phillips head screwdriver to be able to unscrew stuff. Obviously you'll need the new power supply, and also, this is somewhat optional, but I would recommend giving your PC a good clean while you're in there. It's probably going to be quite dusty, and this would probably be a good time to do some routine maintenance while you're in there anyway. The first thing that you'll want to do is take the side panels off both sides of the computer. Just unscrew the 4 thumb screws that you'll likely find at the back of the case to get them open. Once unscrewed, simply slide off the side panels to give yourself easy access to the inside of the PC, remembering to take care to unplug any case fans or LED lighting that you might have attached to the side panels, as there are in my case, if you pardon the pun. The reason you're going to want to remove both side panels is because most cables are going to be routed around the back of the case. As you can see, this is going to be a fun little job, so you'll probably find most of the mesh tucked away around the side of the case, so take that side panel off and you'll be more easily able to get the job done. So the first thing we're going to want to do is start disconnecting our old PSU. So you just want to start by removing the 24-pin motherboard connector from the motherboard. This can be a little bit tricky, but you'll find a tab on the right hand side of it, and that should release it and it should come out. On this particular build, I'm going to need to remove my graphics card before I can remove my CPU power connector, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove that in a moment. But first we're going to also have some SATA power connections, and also for the DVD drive, hard disk drive and SSD, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove those first. Your graphics card, if you have one, is also likely to have external power from the PSU, so you should just go ahead and remove that as well before you remove the graphics card from the machine. So as you can see, I've now removed the graphics card and disconnected the 4-pin CPU power connector from the motherboard, so we've now got all our connections removed. Not forgetting to disconnect anything that's connected by Molex as well, so for example case fans. So what we're going to do is just take our Phillips head screwdriver and remove these 4 screws at the back of the case where the PSU is, and that should then allow us to remove the PSU from the system. So now we've disconnected all our cables and unscrewed our PSU and removed it, this would probably be a good time to give the computer that quick clean we talked about earlier. So as you can see, a lot of dust and grime is built up where the PSU was, and although this case has dust filters on the bottom, you're still sucking air up and dust from the desk, or even worse, if your PC is on the floor, it could be coming up from the carpet, so you just want to get rid of all that crap that's accumulated in there before you do anything else. Right, so I think we're ready to rock and roll on installing this new PSU. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be installing the CX600M, which is part of the build series from Corsair. And while this PSU is part of Corsair's entry series of products, it's around £60, but you do get some great value for money. It's got great build quality, it's got very silent cooling, it's 8+ bronze power efficient, and also it's got some solid performance, but most importantly for me, it's modularly cabled, which means we'll be able to keep the PC nice and tidy. So let's just open the box up and take a look at what we'll need here. First of all, there's some silica gel, which under no circumstances should you ever eat silica gel. It does look tasty, but I'm not entirely sure what happens if you do eat silica gel actually. Maybe it's probably worth trying one day. Anyway, This is the power supply itself, and I do like the look and design of these PSUs, and while I understand that a PSU is all about functionality and nothing to do with aesthetics, it's still nice to actually have a PSU that matches the theme of my build for a change. So at least the PSU, the last PSU was kind of sticking out like a sore thumb, all bright and silver, so the best bit is that the logo is in a nice file tracker green, which is obviously my favourite colour. As I mentioned earlier, this PSU is modular, and therefore it differs from the PSU that I just took out of the machine, which was non-modular. So what this means is we'll need to add extra cables into the back of the power supply to power the various devices that we'll need. So as you can see, there's various connections here which will allow us to do this. Cables with this PSU are also really nice. They're covered in this kind of black braided sleeve, and although the colour of the wiring underneath is showing up on the camera due to the bright light we've got shining on it, to the naked eye it just looks black, so it actually looks really nice inside the case. It doesn't stand out at all. So the PSU comes with all the modular cables that you'll need to connect your various devices. As well as this, we're kindly provided with a number of cable ties, which is really handy because you've likely snitched through the old ones when removing your old PSU. So in this particular case, we're going to install the PSU fan side down with the rear of the PSU and line up to the rear of the case, obviously. But if you're installing the PSU at the bottom, you should never have it fan side up. It should always be fan facing down. Essentially what we're going to be doing next is what we just did to remove the old PSU but in reverse. So we're just going to place the PSU into the correct position, and then once we've got everything wired up into the right places and we're sure we're happy with everything, we can then screw it into position, and at that point the job should be good in. Firstly, I'm just going to connect the 24-pin motherboard connection, and then I'm going to follow that up with the CPU power connection on the motherboard. Once I've done that, I can put the graphics card back in, and then once we've done that, we can reconnect the SATA, the graphics card, and any fan connections and so on and so forth. So now the PSU is installed, and as you can see, it's fully secured. What I've done is wired the CPU connector behind the graphics card, which is the only way to do it really in this case. I've also run the main motherboard connector through the back of the case, so as you can see the cable management is now a lot nicer. There's plenty of airflow going through now. Next, I'm going to get the modular cables out and wire in the 3 SATA power connections for the disk drives, and finally for the graphics card, and also I'm just going to have to reconnect the case fans, and then at that point we should be good to go. So here we are, the new PSU is installed and cable managed to the best of my ability anyway. Just a couple of notes, as I ran across a few things that I wasn't really expecting. So the cable management at the back of the case turned out to be a little bit trickier than I expected. Depending on how much room you've got to work with, you might need to be a bit creative here, but I managed to get everything routed through nicely in the end. It was a bit of a pain though. The second thing is, and I'm not sure how this happened, but I thought I'd reconnected everything properly when I restarted the computer after installing the PSU. I got a Windows boot error. Turns out that the BIOS had reset the boot order, so the disk drives were booting to the wrong disk, so I was trying to boot into my mass storage drive rather than the SSD, so I wasn't sure what happened, but a quick tweak of the BIOS and everything's back to normal. But I did panic for a second there when I saw the boot error, so that's possibly something to bear in mind. Apart from that though, I managed to rewire my computer and nothing exploded or caught fire, so that's quite good. Finally, the $1,000,000 question, has the coil whine been fixed? Well, I'm really happy to say that while there is still a tiny amount of coil whine, it is a lot quieter and it's a lot less noticeable compared to before. It's barely audible now. I can't hear it over the audio of games, for example, so that's the main thing, and it seems to be much less intrusive on a lower frequency, so yeah, I'm really happy with that actually. So, in conclusion, Corsair PSU plus Asus motherboard plus Asus GPU equals no coil whine. Very good.